It is a terrific Tuesday, folks. Hey, I'm your host, Matt Morgan, and you're listening to SOAPBOX Daily, episode 160. Yes, that's 160, folks. 160, episode 160 of SOAPBOX Daily. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Hey, I'm your host, Matt Morgan, and I appreciate you being here. Second day of the week. How you been? How's things going in your world? You have crazy weather like I have, or is it smooth sailing? Who knows? But one thing you should know about yourself is, hey, how has your integrity been? How's your integrity today? Are you being the positive change? Are you doing the right thing when no one else is watching? Only you will know, onwards and upwards. Speaking of actions and behaviors and, doing the right thing, today we're talking about, and here's our topic for today, peer pressure has a new name. Yes, that is our topic for today. Peer pressure has a new name. Now, the term peer pressure, I'm going to get right into this. The term peer pressure, it's an older term that was used in my generation, or Gen X, and it seemed to fade away. It seemed to be something that wasn't commonly out in the forefront anymore. It wasn't commonly used, but it was a really big buzzword, peer pressure, and probably the earlier generations to me. But guess what? Peer pressure has a new name, and I don't know if you figured it out yet, but it's called influence. Yes, that is the modern term of peer pressure, influence, or being an influencer, etc., etc. But they spun it to have a positive, but it's not necessarily, because peer pressure, and we're going to use the peer pressure term in this particular situation, can be positive or negative. What is peer pressure? Peer pressure influences when you do something because you want to feel accepted or valued by your friends. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Coping well with peer pressure is about getting the right balance between being yourself and fitting into your group. This is true. Usually the peer pressure is doing something that you usually wouldn't do in order to be accepted, unfortunately. So you really have to figure out that balancing point and pretty much walk your own walk, but it's difficult because, believe it or not, we're influenced indirectly and directly. There's so many different ways that this comes at you, which people don't really realize. So I'm going to go over some 6 different types of peer pressure, but overall, peer pressure is when you choose to do something you wouldn't otherwise do. So let's get into the 6 points, and hopefully it'll add some clarification. Number 1, spoken peer pressure. Spoken peer pressure is when a teenager asks, suggests, persuades, or otherwise directs another to engage in a specific behavior. If this is done in a one-on-one environment, the recipient of the influence has a stronger chance of adhering to his or her core values and beliefs. If, however, the spoken influence takes place in a group, the negative peer pressure to go along with the group is immense. It's true. Number 2, unspoken peer pressure. With unspoken peer pressure, a teenager is exposed to the actions of one or more peers and is left to choose whether they want to follow along. This could take the form of fashion choices, personal interactions, or joining types of behavior like clubs, cliques, teams, etc. Many young teens lack the mental mentality to control impulses and make wise long-term decisions. Because of this, many teens are more susceptible to the negative peer pressure influence from older or more popular friends. Number 3, direct peer pressure. This type of peer pressure can be spoken or unspoken. Direct peer pressure is normally behavior-centric. Peer pressure examples of these kinds of behaviors would be when a teenager hands another an alcoholic drink, or makes a sexual advance, or looks at another student's paper during a test. The other teen is put into a situation of having to make an on-the-spot decision. Number 4, indirect peer pressure. Similar to unspoken peer pressure, indirect peer pressure is subtle, but can still exert a strong influence on an impressionable young person. When a teen overhears a friend gossiping about another person and then reacts to the gossip, that is indirect peer pressure. Or if a middle schooler learns that the popular kids' parties include drugs or alcohol, that indirect peer pressure may prompt them to experiment as a way to gain acceptance. Number 5, negative peer pressure. Asking a young teenager to engage in behavior that is against their moral code or family values is a type of negative peer pressure. Teens see the actions of other teens with stronger personalities and are put in the position of following the leader or walking away. It's not uncommon for teens with strong morals to find themselves engaging in behavior that goes against against their beliefs simply because they want acceptance. Young people often lack the skills to come up with an excuse or reason to say no to negative peer pressure. Lastly, number 5, positive peer pressure. A group dynamic can be a form of positive peer pressure if the behaviors are healthy, age appropriate, and socially acceptable. Positive peer pressure examples can include a peer group that wants to make good grades and positively influence a young teen to study. Or if a popular friend wants to earn money and save to buy a car, a less outgoing teen may also be influenced to get a job and open a savings account. If members of the football team take a pledge to abstain from drinking alcohol to focus on staying healthy and having a winning season, other students may adopt the same behavior. Parents can be the most powerful influence in a teen's life. You have to be active in your kid's life. Remember that as a parent. Parents can be the strongest influence in their child's life if they understand and are aware of the types of peer pressure their teenager is facing. Supporting healthy friendships, modeling responsible behavior, and keeping an open, judgment-free family dialogue is important ways for parents to set positive peer pressure examples for teens. Just take the time to communicate with your kid, especially your teenagers, and ask them about what types of peer pressures they may be facing, and then help them walk them through it, pros and cons. Hey, believe it or not, even visual things that they see on TikTok and other social media and everything else can indirectly be peer pressure. And influencers, they're peer pressure. They are. So you really got to stay on top of this, because otherwise your kid's going to go off the rails if they're not giving some good guidance when it comes to this. Anyways, I wanted to touch on this because I do see, even in my kid who's very strong-willed and very smart and everything else, she doesn't realize it, but peer pressure is coming through even in her TikTok videos, and she's being influenced more than she realizes. But maybe it's a teenage experience, who knows? But you do want to make sure that it's positive peer pressure they have versus negative. All right, I'm going to wrap this up for today. Hey, if you're sitting back today, please check out our central hub of themadmorgan.com. Yes, themadmorgan.com. We're going to centralize everything over to there because eventually we will branch off into other shows, maybe put some shows on hold like this particular one, and branch off into other areas. So I just want you to know where to find us and all our shows and all our projects moving down the road. So themadmorgan.com. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have an amazing day moving forward. As always, I'm your host, Mad Morgan, and I will see you next episode.